Everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. A few moments ago, as you listened to the Gospel, you heard about the man with dropsy. Dropsy. Not knowing very much about dropsy, you might think that when I can't hold on to something and I keep dropping it, I'm suffering from dropsy. Actually, dropsy is a rather antiquated word now, used to describe something that modern medical people call edema. Edema, which means excessive fluid in the body. It isn't a disease in itself, but rather a symptom of something else that is wrong with a person. For example, if you're foolish enough to take an airplane trip for 10 hours or more, and you think, I'm going to be comfortable on this flight, I'm going to take my shoes off. You sit there for 10 hours. The plane finally lands, and you try to put your shoes back on again. You find that you're having very great difficulty because you have dropsy. You have dropsy because you've been sitting in that cramped airplane seat for 10 hours, not moving very much. There's not much humidity in the cabin, and the body naturally, the liquid blood pools in the lower legs and the feet. You're suffering from dropsy. That's not too serious because it goes away in a few hours. But dropsy can be a symptom of something much more serious. Kidney disease can cause a buildup of fluid in the system. If your heart is not pumping efficiently, if you're suffering from congestive heart failure, again, fluid builds up in the system. People in the last stages of cancer can totally fill up with fluid, become terribly bloated. That is dropsy. So the afflicted man that stands before Jesus at this luncheon to which Jesus has been invited is a very sick man. One wonders why he's even there. He should be home in bed. But isn't this a setup? This whole luncheon is a setup. The Pharisees deliberately arranged to have this very sick man brought into the luncheon to see what Jesus is going to do. They're watching him, as the Gospel tells us. They're watching him. What is Jesus going to do with this very terribly sick man? It's a setup. But Jesus has experienced this type of setup behavior before. And so he turns the tables on those who would try to set him up. He asks the question, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? So he puts the onus on his accusers, would-be accusers. And of course, there's no winning answer to that question. The right answer is to say, no, you should not heal this man with dropsy. Because the law of Moses was very clear. You could not practice medicine on a Sabbath. You couldn't do any work on a Sabbath. But if they answered no, then they would be guilty of an even greater sin, a sin against charity, because this man was desperately ill. He might not even live until tomorrow. So prudently, the Pharisees say nothing. And so Jesus healed the man. What a radical transformation came over the poor man with dropsy. He was completely changed, completely transformed. He was no longer bloated. He looked normal. And whatever had caused these symptoms were gone as well. What a miraculous thing Jesus had done. So now, Jesus decides to give the people a little instruction. He says, which of you, having some beast of burden, if it were to fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, wouldn't you get a rope, gather all your friends, and pull the poor animal out of the pit, even though it was a Sabbath day? Wouldn't survive until the next day. Now, if you're willing to do that for a beast of burden, for an animal, how much more ought you be willing to do it for a fellow human being? So not to help a fellow human being on the Sabbath is absurd, clearly absurd. Now Jesus continues his instruction for those people who were watching him. He proposes a little parable to them. Now we're not told this, but apparently Jesus has noticed when people were coming in for the luncheon, they made a mad rush for the best seats, try and get a seat at the head table. Perhaps the food would be warmer. But for whatever reason, people wanted the best seats, and Jesus noticed it. So he says to them, if you're invited to a wedding, don't make a mad rush for the best seats. It's likely that the host is going to come up and say, well look, the mayor is here. You're sitting in the mayor's seat. You have to move. Go and sit there by the kitchen door. How embarrassing that would be. Now Jesus is not simply teaching a lesson about etiquette and table manners. Just like dropsy is a symptom of something a lot more serious going on in the body, this mad rush for the best seats is a symptom of something much more serious going on in the soul. That is pride. The more serious disease is pride. Simply put, pride is having the wrong idea about our relationship with God. Our relationship with God, which is our primary relationship. Based on our relationship with God, falls all the other relationships that we have. We cannot fool God. We cannot fool God. We may try to fool other people, we may try to fool ourselves, but we cannot fool God. But if we try to fool God, God will put us down. He who exalts himself will be humbled. So true humility is that honest knowledge that before God we are who we are. We might like to be somebody else, somebody better, but God knows who we are. God knows us so intimately. We cannot fool God. So true humility is that honest knowledge that before God we are who we are. This lesson on pride is a perfect follow-up to the healing of the man with dropsy. He was all bloated with disease. Now Jesus is dealing with people who are bloated with pride, a spiritual disease, and he wants to heal them as well. Jesus does not want us to fall prey to the illness of pride. So be honest. That's the key word. Be honest about who you are and what you are before God, first and foremost. Because it is your relationship with God that is first and foremost among all relationships. If you exalt yourself, God will put you down. If you humble yourself, God will raise you up. But be careful. As I said, humility is honesty with oneself before God. To acknowledge that God has given us great talents. So, for example, if you're invited to contribute something to a bake sale, for example, you say, oh, I can't bake. All my cakes fall flat. My pie crust is so hard that you can sheathe battleships with it. What you're really searching for is praise. You say, oh, no, we've tasted your pie crust. It's so flaky, it's wonderful. Your pies are light and fluffy. No, it's not humility that you're showing here by denying your talents. It's pride, a type of reverse pride in reverse. Or if you can sing, you're invited to join the choir, you say, oh no, I can't sing. Somebody says, oh, you sing like a nightingale. Again, it's a false humility. If you have a talent and you can put it to use for somebody else, true humility is to make that talent available. So what we want is to have a simplicity before God that says, I am what I am, I have these talents, I have these failings. I acknowledge the fact that I am a sinner before God, that I fail many times a day. Sometimes I'm was quite a luncheon that Jesus attended. It started out with the healing of a poor, bloated man standing before him. It ended by bursting the bloated pride of the people that had come to the lunch, teaching them about true humility. May this be the word for the week that we carry from this church today. Everyone who humbles himself, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the